Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first video of Unit 8. I'm going to go through 5 whole lessons today because this stuff isn't going to be on STAR, but it's still in your lessons you have to do. And I definitely want to talk about it because it'll help you understand, everything for life science, because this is where it all starts. But I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, so I'll just go through each lesson here in this video, and hopefully that'll help you understand them more. So it's all about cells, if you've heard of those before. Cells are the small unit of life, okay? So what exactly that means, we'll talk about. Let's go through all these learning objectives real quick. Here we go. I will understand how life is made of cells. I will describe the 5 functions of life. I will label a compound microscope. I will state the 3 parts of the cell theory. I will describe which kingdoms are unicellular. I will understand that microorganisms can be both harmful and helpful. And I will compare and contrast plant and animal cells. So here we go. Lesson 1 is called What is a Cell? So if you're wondering that, we'll start with that answer. So a cell is the basic building block of life. All living organisms are made of cells. And remember, an organism is a living thing. In order to be alive, it must have at least one cell. So rocks don't have cells because they're not alive. Same with my wall in my house here or my phone. Okay, they don't have cells because they're not alive. Okay, anything that's living does have cells. So your dog is made up of cells. You're made up of cells. And you can see here in this picture, it shows that atoms are the smallest thing, right? And then cells are little tiny things that you need a microscope to see. You put a bunch of cells together, then you get a living thing. So some cells are unicellular, which means they're only made up of one cell. So like bacteria, I'm sure you've heard of that word before, but a bacteria is a unicellular organism. It's just one cell that just kind of, walks or swims around everywhere. Other organisms are multicellular, which means they have more than one cell, and cells do different jobs for a multicellular organism. So, for example, you have blood cells, brain cells, skin cells. All those cells have different jobs that they do to help the organism survive. Every cell contains DNA. Maybe you've heard of that word before, but DNA is basically like instructions. So if you're going to cook a recipe, you need a cookbook to tell you what to do, right? DNA is like the instructions for us, for humans or for any organism. It tells the cell what it's supposed to do, and it's as simple as that. Robert Hooke's the first one to look at cells in a microscope, and he called it that because it looked like cells or rooms that monks used to live in. So let's talk about the 5 functions of life. This is from your lesson, and you can read this in more detail if you want to later, but I'll talk about that to start off lesson 2. So the 5 functions of life are growth, energy, respiration, reaction, and reproduction. So all living things can mostly do this. So growth, all living things grow and change over time. Think about how much you've grown and changed, right? Energy, all living things need energy, which comes from food. Then respiration, all living things give off and take in gases. So respiration is a fancy word for breathing. Even plants breathe. They don't have lungs to breathe in, but they, put gases into the air. Then they also take gases out of the air. So they do a form of breathing. Okay. Reaction, all living things react to their environment. Like if you were to poke me with something sharp on my arm, I'd be, whoa, I'd have a reaction. And even like a plant, like if you water it too much or you don't water it, it'll react to that change. Reproduction, all living things reproduce or make another organism, okay? So that's how each species lives on, because there are some members of that species that are reproducing. So the rest of this lesson focuses on microscopes and cell theory. So the first microscopes were not very strong, but now they're much stronger. And we're going to focus on the parts of the compound microscope, which is the type of microscope you see in your class, in a classroom. I know we're all virtual, but anyways, so you see all the different parts here that I'll talk about. So we got the lenses, okay? So the lenses are the curved pieces of glass that gather light and magnify the object. So the objective lens is closest to the viewing platform. Then we got the eyepiece lens, which is up here. See, the objective lens is down here. Eyepiece lens is up here. We got the coarse adjustment knob and the fine adjustment knob, which are these little things that you spin, and it helps you zoom in and zoom out and make it clear and blurry. If you have glasses and you take off your glasses, it looks blurry. So that's why we change these to make it clear. Next, we have the slide, which is what the specimen is on. So if you put some gump from a pond or something, you want to look to see if there's any bacteria in there, you put it on the slide, and then you put the slide under the microscope. If you have the diaphragm, which controls how much light passes through. You don't want too much light or too little light, and it changes depending on what you're looking at. So that's why you change it. Last, we got the magnification power. Okay, magnification power describes how large an image can be viewed. And then make sure you do the Nearpod, because this is a little virtual microscope that you can have fun with and look at some different things on there. So let's talk about theories. So cell theory. A theory is based on one or more hypotheses that have been found to be true and verified by many groups of scientists. Cell theory states that the cell is the basic unit of life. All organisms are made of one or more cells, and all cells come from other cells. So that's what we have observed about cells. And then there's a couple of pictures that show the history of cell theory that I won't read off, but it's good information there. All right, Unit 8, Lesson 3 is on unicellular organisms. Remember, a unicellular organism makes its own food, and we're talking about, a unicellular organism has one cell, okay? So here are the 6 kingdoms of life. If it's a living thing, it's going to be either an animal, plant, fungi, protist, bacteria, or archaebacteria. So animals are most of the things that you think of that are alive. Like you and me are in the kingdom animals, dogs, lions, fish, birds, lizards, stuff like that, stuff that move to get food are animals, okay? And then next we got plants. So plants make their own food. I'm sure you know many examples of plants like grass, trees, bushes, flowers, stuff like that. Fungi are like mushrooms and other blobs that eat dead and decaying organisms. It sounds gross, but without them, there'd be a bunch of dead stuff laying around. So thankfully we have fungi. And these last 3 are the 3 we're going to talk about in this lesson. So these are all unicellular, which means you need a microscope to see them. They're very small. They're one cell. Protist bacteria and archaebacteria. Okay. First, let's talk about bacteria, the one you've probably heard of. They could be good and helpful. So a lot of people hear the word bacteria and they're like, oh no, it's automatically a bad thing. Well, we all have bacteria that lives inside our stomachs that help us digest food. Bacteria also helps decompose decaying matter, can make antibiotics, which is medicine, and help make cheese and yogurt. So bacteria can be very helpful. It can also be harmful. So bacteria can spoil food. It could take all the oxygen out of a lake and cause the fish to die if there's too much bacteria in a lake. And then it could also make people sick, which is what most people think of when they hear bacteria. We got one slide on archaebacteria, and it's very similar to bacteria. That's why you see the word bacteria in it. But the difference is archaebacteria live in extreme environments. So freezing temperatures, very hot temperatures, temperatures that are locations that are very salty that no other organisms can live. Some can even make their own food even when sunlight's not present. So that's just a crazy group of organisms called archaebacteria. And last, we got protists. Okay, so they have a complex cell. Unlike bacteria who have a simple cell, they have a complex cell. And they can be plant-like, animal-like, or fungi-like. Okay, and they can be good or bad. So some ways that they could be good is they could be eaten by people, so they could be food for us. They could be decomposers, which helps get rid of dead stuff we don't want. And they could be used for toothpaste, polish, and cleaners. So those are all great uses for humans. And last, they could be bad. So they can cause disease like bacteria. And same thing, too much in an ocean or lake can cause all the fish to die. So this other category is viruses. They're unique because they're kind of alive and they're also kind of not alive. They don't have a lot of the stuff to make them qualified to be alive, but they act like they're alive. And they're mostly harmful, and they could cause us to get the cold or the flu, stuff like that. All right, so we got 2 more lessons to go through. I know it's a lot of talking for this one. Let's go to animal cells, okay? So lesson 4, we'll talk about animal cells, and then we'll talk about plant cells. So all animals are made up of many, many, many cells. A person has over 1 trillion cells with over 200 different types of cells. These cells are all working together. Even your bone cells are working with your blood cells, and your brain cells are working with your finger cells, telling it to move, stuff like that. Let's look at the main parts of the cell here. So the nucleus is like the brain of the cell. It's the control center. Vacuoles store materials such as water, chemicals, or waste. Mitochondria are called the power plant of the cell. They help make energy for the cell. The cytoplasm is like the wall. It's like the outside of, I'm sorry, I'm getting that mixed up. The cell membrane is the wall, and the cytoplasm is like the body. It's like the gel-like substance that contains everything else. And this is in the Nearpod. You could explore what the cell looks like. And here's some different types of cells. We got red blood cells, which help carry oxygen to your body. Nerve cells help bring signals from your brain to your rest of your body. Could tell you to move. And muscle cells contract or shorten, and they help you lift things. All right, let's talk about plant cells. So plant cells have a lot of the same things as animal cells, but also some extra things like a cell wall. So the cell wall is kind of like the cell membrane, except it's extra strong, and that's what gives it its stiff feel to it. And then next we got vacuoles, which animal cells have vacuoles, but plant cells have one large vacuole instead of many small ones. Chloroplasts. So chloroplasts make food from sunlight, and chlorophyll gives plants their green color. And you could explore that in the Nearpod, explore what a plant cell looks like. So there are specialized plant cells, like we talked about blood cells and nerve cells, but plant cells also have some as well in the leaves, stem, and roots that have different jobs. The mesophyll cells contain chloroplasts to make fluid in the leaves. Xylem and phloem cells are found in the stem, and they help move stuff up and down. And the epidermis cells on the root take up water and minerals from the soil. So they all have different important jobs. Okay, so last 2 slides talk about similarities and differences, okay? So how are they similar? They're both complex. Plant and animal cells are both complex, which means they're not very simple. There's a lot going on. They both have a nucleus, cell membrane, vacuoles, mitochondria, and cytoplasm, a lot of the same material. How are they different? Well, plant cells have a rectangle shape, and animal cells are more of a round shape. Plant cells have a cell wall, and they have one large vacuole, just like I was saying. And plant cells have chloroplasts, and animal cells do not. So that is the lessons. So that's all of lessons 1 through 5. I'll do another video with lessons 6, 7, and 8, talking about the human body. But that's all about cells, many different types of cells, a lot of information. Hopefully that helps. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye.